What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Chris Evans here with Zero Meter Chasers, live here on July 27th, Monday at 12:55 Eastern Standard Time here on your Monday. And again, I apologize for my voice as it's very raspy here, as I did have a football camp over the weekend, but I did want to cover yet another severe weather risk that we have here in Kentucky today, and also that oppressive heat that is going on. So, as always, I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me clearly here. So just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, or let me know in the comment section that the audio is working correctly in this video. So you're currently looking at the Kentucky Mesonet website here, and you can see where we have the heat advisory and kind of this pinkish color, and then in the dark pink here is where we have the heat extreme heat warnings for this afternoon and evening, and anywhere where you're kind of in this orangish color in the heat advisory along the I-65 corridor, you can expect anywhere from 105 degree heat indices as we get into the afternoon and evening hours. And then anywhere here in western Kentucky where we have this pink and purple area is where you can expect heat indices over 110 degrees as we get into the afternoon and evening. So right now the current temperatures across the state, western Kentucky, we're getting into the upper 80s. Across I-65, they're in the middle of the 80s. And then eastern Kentucky, we're in the lower 80s. Far southern Kentucky, still getting very lucky in the upper 70s. I did want to show kind of our dew points here, and it's very oppressive heat out there. If we look at our dew points outside, you'll see statewide almost everybody is seeing at least 70 degree dew points, and we're approaching 80 degree dew points out here in far western Kentucky. So it's a very hot and humid day today. It's been very hot and humid for the last week, kind of rinse, cycle, repeat with storms that are possible here as we get into the afternoon. So again, if you're in this pink area, just make sure if you have to be outside, you have water, you stay very hydrated, as heat indices will approach and exceed 100 degrees as we get into the afternoon. So what I wanted to do now is kind of look at radar real quick and what to expect as we get into the afternoon and evening today. If we look at radar, you'll see we don't have much going on in Kentucky, so I did want to kind of zoom out here to a complex of storms in northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin that has just fired here in the last couple of hours. And this is our complex of storms that does have this enhanced risk here from the Storms Prediction Center for portions of Illinois and Indiana as we get into the afternoon and evening, especially for the damaging wind risk. I do think that there is a high damaging wind risk here in portions of Illinois and Indiana as that complex of storms kind of grows here in the next couple of hours. It'll have 60 to 70, possibly even 80 mile an hour winds. If we look at the tornado risk for today, there is only a 2% tornado risk, very low tornado risk, more of a damaging wind risk type of setup with this. When we look at the wind risk, that's where we do have that 30% SIG 1, meaning we could have significant severe weather or significant wind gusts as we get into the afternoon and evening hours. And that's kind of centered here across central and northern Indiana. That does look to be where this MCS is going to track as we get into the next couple of hours. And there's a lot of uncertainty. We'll cover that here. But there is a lot of uncertainty on what's going to happen in the next couple of hours after that. So we'll kind of we'll look at that here. Model data is not going to handle this setup well at all. But we'll kind of look at the observations and kind of use just what radar is showing and what I expect to happen as we get through the next couple of hours and through the afternoon and evening. And then we only really have a hail risk up here in northern Indiana and Illinois. There is no hail risk here in Kentucky. That is just for these storms here that have already fired. And again, we'll look at radar here in 1 second. But if I zoom out, kind of show Kentucky in this risk, here's Kentucky here. We'll zoom in just a little bit so you can see some more towns here. And that slight risk is really posted along the western Kentucky and Bluegrass Parkways, a little bit farther south, but really along the parkways and points off to the north. And again, there's a lot of uncertainty here in Kentucky. This this risk does look to be in the evening and overnight hours. And again, we'll cover that a little bit as we get into this video. But again, I'll look at our wind risk here. We do not have that SIG 1 or the significant wind risk as we get into the afternoon. That is, it's pushing on Cincinnati, but it's really only for Indiana and Illinois and Ohio. But we do have a 15% wind risk. I don't think that the setup today is even as good of a setup for severe weather as we had yesterday, as we did have a lot of wind reports here in Hopkinsville, Madisonville, and Evansville that did bring down some trees. I don't think that's the same kind of setup here, and we'll kind of look at that again. But again, as we look at radar, before we look at any model data, again, we'll zoom in here to Kentucky. We don't have anything going on. This is at 12:52 here in the afternoon, and we don't have anything going on. The only thing that we're going to have to watch is this complex of storms that we near Chicago that we were just looking at earlier. And you can already tell, if I zoom in a little bit here, how this is already kind of coming into and congealing into a line. And that's why I'm kind of concerned about the damaging wind threat here in far northern Indiana. But luckily, that does not look to be in our area. So I will cover any of your questions as I get through the video. If I don't cover it, we're going to have like a period at the end where I'll cover any questions that you have. So make sure you stay through the end of the video. It's not going to be a very long video, and I'll cover any questions. So I do appreciate you guys putting your questions in there, and I will get to those by the end of the video. So what I wanted to do now is kind of look at model data, and one thing that's important to look at when you look at model data is to see how model data is handling the current setup right now, and you'll see it's not handling it terribly, right? We do have those storms here near Chicago, just to the north of Kankakee, Illinois. So the HRRR is doing a decent job. And as we get into the next couple of hours, you'll see that here's your timestamp up here on the top left. The HRRR is showing a widespread threat for damaging winds here along the Illinois and Indiana border. I'll kind of zoom this out a little bit, but that complex of storms that's currently near Chicago is going to move south as we get through the afternoon and evening. The HRRR is running a little bit slow, so this is showing 3 p.m. when really it's probably going to be 2 p.m. as that complex is going to move through a little bit faster. Now, as we get to 6 p.m., this is where I think the HRRR might be off its rocker a little bit here. Model data does not handle these MCS complexes well in the summertime, and we'll kind of cover one more piece of data after this to show you why I think the data is not handling this perfectly, but the HRRR is showing storms kind of going towards western Indiana and eastern Illinois as we get into the afternoon hours. But really, I think the storms are going to track kind of in this type of area here as we get into the afternoon and evening. That's where we're going to have the highest CAPE, kind of the best wind shear to support organized severe weather as we get into the afternoon and evening. Now, if you're along the I-65 corridor and if you're in western Kentucky, I don't think our severe risk is 0. We'll have to kind of track and see what the radar looks like here at 6 o'clock because, again, excuse me, my voice is so cooked right now, guys. It is terrible. Anyways, the model data here is showing this at 6 o'clock, but I think the complex is likely going to be further east here in central Indiana. So we'll just have to see what radar looks like at 6 o'clock. And it does look like this complex is not going to reach anywhere in Kentucky until we get into the late afternoon into the evening hours. So most of your Monday is going to remain dry here in Kentucky. I'm not really worried about any of the severe risk until we get past 6, 7 o'clock. I hope we have no young kids in the chat right now. They're probably emoting crazy. Anyways, after about 6 or 7, we're probably going to start to see storms start to push into the I-75 or I-64 corridor. So again, we'll kind of look at model data. Just again, I don't think model data is going to handle this setup perfectly. But as we get to about 9 o'clock, you'll see how that's kind of starting to reach the I-64 and I-75 corridor. But you'll see that complex is kind of weakening, especially as the sun goes down. So these MCS complexes are kind of driven on instability or CAPE. And we're going to look at CAPE here in 1 second. And that's just the amount of fuel in the atmosphere that'll kind of support severe weather in a setup like this. So once the sun goes down, the CAPE goes down, the instability goes down. So as we get to once the sun goes down and later in your Monday evening, I do think this is going to be a weakening complex of showers and storms. And that's why why I don't think that the severe risk is that high here in Kentucky. However, we'll have to see how strong they are here, because sometimes they can outrun the highest Cape if they're very organized. So I really think here in Kentucky we'll just have to see how radar looks like as we get to about 6 o'clock. I don't think the HRRR is handling this perfectly here. Again, I think that the best corridor is going to be between the I-64 to I-75 corridor here. And Indiana has a much higher threat for severe weather than we do today. And I don't think, I know I seen a question in the chat about the tornado risk. I don't think we have a very high tornado risk anywhere in Kentucky or anywhere with this setup at all. The main risk with this setup would be damaging winds and some isolated flooding, but this complex is kind of moving pretty quick. So we'll just kind of have to see as we get into the afternoon and evening. As we get to 11 o'clock, the HRRR shows that complex kind of dying off completely. And then if we move forward again as we get to 4 a.m., it doesn't really show much. So we'll just have to really watch that complex as we get to about 6 or 7 p.m., kind of see how it's tracking here in central Indiana, and then we'll track here in northern Kentucky and see how it holds on until the sun goes down this afternoon. So I really don't think this is a high setup at all. The highest threat for me in Kentucky looks to be in between Louisville and Lexington here into Cincinnati. I would say right there. And again, the timing looks to be in the evening to the overnight. It does not look to reach us until about maybe 10 p.m. to midnight. And then once you get along the Western Kentucky parkways and south, I don't think we'll see very much storms at all. Western Kentucky, just based on the setup, I don't think we'll see much out here in far Western Kentucky either. I think this is more of a central to Eastern Kentucky type of setup. We'll just have to watch that complex again, that complex of storms that's currently near Chicago. So I did want to show one more piece of data here before we got going. Now, I do understand that this can kind of be hard to read, so I'm going to walk everybody kind of through this. And then once we get through this, we'll look through a National Weather Service graphic, and I'll get through any questions that I haven't answered in this video yet. So this is looking at the mesoscale analysis from the Storms Prediction Center, basically just looking at what our atmosphere currently is capable of right now. And we're looking at that CAPE or fuel that we have in the atmosphere to support organized severe weather. And you'll see here are our storms all the way. For reference, first off, down here where my cursor is where Louisville is. Here's Kentucky all the way down here. So I'm not worried about severe storms. Where you see this kind of blue, because I know some people see the blue and kind of get confused, that is just where we have a cap in place that is not allowing for storms to fire right now. We'll have that cap in place through the afternoon. Is why we're not worried for storms at all through the afternoon here in Kentucky. But if we look farther north up here to northern Illinois, you can see that complex of storms here that is near Chicago. And that's where we're starting to get to see 6,000 joules of CAPE. To get organized severe weather, you need anywhere from about 2,000 to 3,000 joules of CAPE, and we have 3 times that. So 6,000 CAPE up here in central Illinois into central Indiana. And when we look at the wind shear, that's the thing that's interesting with this setup too. You'll see we have 50 to 55 knots of wind shear. For organized severe weather with wind shear, we just need about 35 knots. So when you look for severe weather, you're looking at the wind shear, which is just the organized wind shear to support organized severe weather, and then your CAPE or your fuel for severe weather. So you look, as we get into Kentucky, we don't have much wind shear at all, which is why the greater threat is definitely going to be into Illinois and Indiana this afternoon and evening. But if we kind of fast forward this here a couple hours, you can fast forward this, and then the data will kind of predict what the atmosphere will look like. This is fast forward to about 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here, and you'll see the HRRR showing nearly 5,000 joules of CAPE in central Indiana, and that's where that complex kind of looks to track near Indianapolis, and kind of will ride that CAPE gradient near with 4,000, 5,000 CAPE into central Indiana, and I think especially central Indiana as we get into the afternoon. And I do think that if you know anybody in the Indianapolis area, I do think it'll be an elevated risk of damaging winds as we get into the afternoon and evening. But again, in Kentucky, we're not worried about any severe weather until we get into the in the overnight hours. I did want to go through this last graphic here from the National Weather Service here in Louisville, and the first thing that they're kind of highlighting here is the heat values that we showed at the beginning. Those heat indices of about 105 as we get into the afternoon here along the I-65 corridor, and then here in western Kentucky we'll have heat indices exceeding 110 degrees. So very hot and humid afternoon today, and then again here is that severe weather outlook as we get into the afternoon and evening. We will go through timing here again in 1 second, but we do have that slight risk from anywhere along the western Kentucky bluegrass parkways and further north. Damaging winds are going to be the main risk. In addition to lightning and flooding. And then again, you'll see where the National Weather Service in Louisville is saying there's also a scenario where storms could fall apart before arriving, especially across central Kentucky. So I definitely think this is an I-64 to I-71 event up here along in northern Kentucky. And then we'll just have to kind of track radar and kind of see what it looks like here as we get into the evening and overnight hours. Again, here are our hazards. Biggest risk is going to be the damaging wind risks, and it could be anywhere from 75 miles an hour or higher as we get into the afternoon and evening hours. Here is that timing here. Again, it looks to be about anywhere from 8 to 11 p.m. along and north of the western Kentucky parkways. If you're along I-64, you're going to see storms first. If you're in central Kentucky, not sure if we're going to see storms this afternoon and evening, especially in the overnight. We'll just have to kind of track and see how radar looks like. We do have that marginal risk of flash flooding. That is just where storms will kind of train over the same area. We've had a lot of rain in the last couple of weeks, so won't take a lot of rain to cause some flash flooding issues. And then again, the biggest thing, not a lot of people know this, but the number one death-related or weather-related death cause of deaths is heat in Kentucky. So make sure you have a plan if you're outside. Never leave people or pets alone in closed cars. Make sure you hydrate if you have to be outside in these conditions. So very hot and humid day, and then we'll have to track and see how the radar kind of looks as we get into the afternoon and evening today. So this is where I'll kind of open up for any other questions that I haven't kind of covered here. I did want to flip over to radar real quick here. Yeah, and you'll see that kind of nasty, there's your tornado warning here just to the west of Chicago, and I was just looking at that. It had an area of rotation. I want to look at this real quick here. So this is in the west area. Yeah, look at that rotation, guys. I'm going to kind of zoom this in a little bit here. We'll get close. I will get to any questions here in 1 second. But we hit in Downers Grove, Illinois. We do have a tornado warning here, and that's some nasty rotation on this cell that is just to the east of Naperville. So this is a very populated area here. We'll kind of look at the graphic. It is radar indicated. I was just making sure it was not observed. So that's a nasty cell here in Illinois. Just looking at this here, I'm going to get to any questions that we have now. So yeah, crazy setup in Illinois. Again, if you know anybody in northern Illinois, northern Indiana, we'll have to kind of watch this through the next couple of hours. Sumaya said, any tornado concern for London? Since I'm in the yellow and I'm in a mobile home, I'm not worried about the tornado risk in Kentucky today, especially not in London. I'm not sure if London will see very many storms overnight tonight at all. But this is more of an Indiana and Illinois risk, I think. But we could have some isolated severe weather along and north of the western Kentucky and bluegrass parkways. Brooklyn asked us, there a big risk of flooding? I don't think that there's a big risk of flooding today, especially not here in Kentucky, but we'll just have to kind of track and see what radar looks like in the next couple of hours because, you know, again, data's not going to handle this setup very well at all. So we'll just have to look at radar, how it looks as these storms kind of track into central Indiana in the next couple of hours, and we'll just take it from there. But I don't think flooding's the biggest risk. I do think damaging winds are a big risk, though, especially northern Kentucky and, again, in Indiana and Illinois. Anything for the KDAS, I'm going to be camping. So I don't think western Kentucky is going to see much from this setup today, but we do have another setup tomorrow where we could see another MCS. It's kind of rinse, cycle, repeat. And a setup like this is why I'm kind of taking it one setup at a time, one day at a time, because model data didn't handle yesterday well, and it's not handling today well. So it's not going to handle each day very well, but if you're going to be camping maybe like for the next couple of days, I would just stay tuned to the 0 meter page because we'll continue to have updates each day as it kind of looks like a rinse, cycle, repeat setup through the end of the week. So again, I'm going to leave the floor open here for any other questions that we have in the next couple of hours. I want to zoom out this weather front radar a little bit. See those nasty storms here going near Chicago. And again, these are going to track towards the Indianapolis area here in the next couple of hours. And then if I zoom out completely here, we're going to zoom in just a little bit. I got a new mouse here, so I'm kind of working with it a little bit. These are not going to reach the Kentucky, not even the I-65 corridor until we get in around the evening. Again, I would say the timing looks to be anywhere from 9 to 11 along the I-64, I-75 corridor. So not a big severe risk at all in Kentucky. More worried about the damaging wind risk in Illinois and Indiana today. So, again, I appreciate everybody coming in here. I appreciate all the support. We'll continue to have updates today, but I don't think today is going to warrant another broadcast, as I don't think it's a very high, severe risk here in Kentucky at all. But, again, appreciate everybody coming in here, and I hope everybody has a safe and blessed day. Thank you, guys.